I want to turn to Genesis chapter 12, go right on over there. So, in the midst of these accusations, Stephen's response here, and we're going to read through all of this eventually. Is Sean Clark here? He's not here. It's going to be like several weeks that we're going to go through Acts chapter 7. He would be one to bother me for doing this. But I love the Old Testament so much, and there's so much we can glean from these stories of these beautiful men and women in it. And so I want to go back and I want to look at what Stephen's talking about. Because what he's sharing, they're going to be well acquainted with the stories. And many of us are as well. But he's saying here, in his defense, what's happening, what God is doing through this Messiah is not something that just happened overnight. It's not something that just that's over on an island by itself, that's totally disconnected from our heritage and from what's been going on. No, he's literally going to tell these people, this is what it's been about all along. This is it. This is Israel's history is culminating in this Messiah, and then later on towards the end of it, he's actually going to give them some kind of hard words where he's going to say, listen, the people of God for years have actually missed God's prophets and missed people that God has been calling to them. And he says it he basically says, don't miss it, but he says, you stiff-necked people, and he goes, he's pretty hardcore. His face is shining like an angel, and he's calling them stiff-necked people. It's wild, huh? But in Genesis chapter 12, we're going to get to see Abraham, who he begins with. Why does he choose Abraham? Probably because Abraham was the guy that God used to birth this nation of Israel. And Stephen, through this address, is going to bring up people who were just like incredibly important in Israel's history. We'll see David, we'll see Joseph, we'll see Abraham. But this first guy, Abraham, man, who's read the story of Abraham? A lot of us, right? It's awesome. And you know what? I'm going to encourage you all to go back and read the whole story of Abraham this week. It's chapters 12 through 25. That's like 2 chapters a day. Oh man, we're getting serious now. And if you don't, and at the end, next week I'm going to ask everyone, have you done it? Like John did. Would you share that last week, John? And if you don't raise your hand, I'm just kidding. That was a joke. He had shared last week. Yeah. You had to be here last week. But he brings up Abraham. And let's just open up in chapter 12. Let's read verse 1. And Stephen said this already. But I want to really think about what's going on. And I want us to actually put ourselves in Abraham's shoes here. Now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abraham was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Can you imagine being in Abraham's shoes here? It's pretty crazy, right? God comes to you and literally says, I'm going to change the world through your family. Like, I'm going to bless you, Justin. You're going to be so blessed that eventually every family on the face of the earth will be blessed through your seed and through what I do through you. That's a hallelujah moment. It's like, yes! But what does he tell Abraham he wants him to do? This is serious. Like this is a challenge, right? He says, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I'll show you." So he says, "I have all these awesome things in store for you, Abraham. I'm going to ask you to do one thing. I'm going to ask you to trust me. I'm going to ask you to leave your family and your country and all the things you're comfortable with in your comfortable surroundings and trust me." How hard would that be for you to do? Like really, like put yourself, like Abraham and Sarah, these are people like you and I, and we'll see here in a minute, they even make mistakes. Like These are people like you and I. Can you imagine God coming to you, go, I'm going to do all this through you, but the first step, I'm just going to ask you just to leave. Leave your country, leave your family, and just trust me and come follow me. And like I can put myself in, I don't know about you guys, I can put myself in Abraham's shoes super easily because all my family pretty much lives here. Some of us don't, have family scattered all around, but like my parents live in Murfreesboro, my wife's parents live in Murfreesboro, my sister lives in Murfreesboro, her brothers live really close. My brother's the only one who kind of moved out, but it's Dixon, so it's like an hour away. It's really not that far. And so I look at this and I'm asking myself, if God says, John, man, I've got such a huge blessing for you, but I want you to trust me and leave your family, leave all of this, and go to Canada. Would I do it? You guys like Canada, don't you? You're glad I said that. Yeah. Especially you. Trudy, she's like, yes, Canada, that's where he's telling you to go. Yeah, there you go. What would you do? And I know I would go, but it wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be easy. And when I think back here, I think it was probably not that easy for Abraham. What do you think? I don't know. You think it was easy for him to leave all of his family, his country, his everything that he was used to, and just trust God? But was it good? He was going to be a guy through who all the families of the earth were going to be blessed, but God is asking for this initial step of obedience, an initial step of trust. And it says, simply in verse 4, so Abraham went, as the Lord had told him. And guys, I've thought about this a lot this week. And Kyle actually asked me the name of the sermon, which I usually don't. I usually kind of cringe when he says that because I got to figure out something. But today I was like, Adventures with God. Because this whole week God has been speaking to me saying, I have so many exciting adventures for all of us. If we would just step out of our comfort zones and our comfortable ways of life and begin to trust him and go, okay, I'm not sure about this. It may be a challenge, but I will trust you. And we begin to walk out of those things that he has this awesome, fun, exciting, wild life for us. Now, it may not always be easy. That wasn't easy. But I feel like so many times we live this life, guys, where it's I have to do the most safest thing in the world. We got to protect my family. We can't do anything that could harm anyone. I'm not saying go hurt your family or purposely try to. You get what I'm saying, right? But we're trying to live in this bubble. Even I said earlier, a lot of churches wouldn't let anyone speak because they don't want anything out of the ordinary to happen, right? We've got everything pre-programmed. We want to live this life like this, and we try our best and our darndest not to rock the boat. But when I read the Bible, everyone in here are boat rockers. We sit around reading all these stories about these boat rockers that did these crazy things, and it's comfortable just to read about them. It really is. That's why a lot of people, talk to a lot of people man, I've been studying. I haven't seen a lot of doing it because it takes a little risk to do. It doesn't take a lot of risk to read. It takes a lot of risk to do. And I feel like God is encouraging us through the story of Abraham, guys. I just feel it in my spirit encouraging us to step out of the boat as Peter did, to take a step out of this normal, safe kind of life that we've built for ourselves and trust God. Now, it looks different for everyone, right? God may call Trudy to go to Canada. But it also may be you haven't even met your neighbor next to you, and God in your heart is going, you need to go say hi to them. You need to go introduce yourself to him or to her or to whatever. And you go, God, this is uncomfortable for me. I know. You think that I'm this super, a lot of people think I'm this super extroverted guy because I can come up here and speak. For some reason, I actually can speak almost better in front of groups than even one-on-one sometimes. Some people know what I'm talking about and they're shaking their head. But if I'm one-on-one, sometimes it's harder for me actually to share things and share my heart, with other people. Maybe it's because they can talk back. I guess you guys could. You can't directly talk back right away, right? But maybe a big risk for you is ringing your neighbor's doorbell and saying, hey, I haven't even really met you before. You know what I mean? I want to get to know you. Or maybe it's cutting the grass because you've noticed that they're an older couple and they need help, and you could be a tremendous help for them. Maybe it's moving to Utah. I don't know what that is. And I can't tell you what that is for you and for in your life. Maybe it's taking your workplace and looking at it in new eyes. Listen, when we walk with the Spirit, when we are literally living our daily life in communion with God and we're walking with Him and we're trusting Him, our lives are an adventure. Like a normal supermarket visit isn't a normal supermarket visit. Like I read stories of guys who go to the supermarket and their wife was getting mad because they were praying for everybody. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like that's the kind of exciting life that I believe God has for us. Now, Abraham's 75 years old whenever he leaves. And I'm going to skip over to around chapter 16, but I'm pretty much just going to summarize this for you all. So about 10 years later, God has said to Abraham, I'm going to bless all the families of the earth through you, Abraham. Just trust me and come follow me. 10 years later, Abraham doesn't even have a son. This is, think about this. Like I've really thought about this a lot this week. 10 years later, what are you going to say? What would you be saying to God? God, I left my family for you. God, I left all that was comfortable for you. You said you're going to bless all the families of the earth through me, through my seed, and my wife can't even have kids. Like, it's been 10 years. Will we trust Him? That's the question. Will we continue to trust Him even when it doesn't make a lot of sense? And Abraham and Sarah, in this situation, I think they kind of partially trusted God, and you ever help God out a little bit? I got a lot of laughs, so I'm going to say that's probably a lot of people. I'm like 2 hands in the air. That's all me. Yeah. I have a hard time being patient. I do. Sometimes that works to my benefit. Sometimes it doesn't work to my benefit. And I've got myself in some stink piles or maybe thrown some stink bombs out, as John had said last week, and caused some messes. But Abraham and Sarah decide, all right, this is taking too long. So we're going to have, you got it. God said He's going to bless. I mean, put yourself here. Wouldn't you think about doing the same thing? I'm just being real. Like we sit back and these are real people. For real people. When you sit back and go, okay, well, it's been 10 years. God said that He's going to bless the families of the earth through me. So we got to have a child some way. And so Sarah gives Hagar to Abraham, and they have a child. And Ishmael is born. You know what I love about God? That didn't derail His plan. They tried to help God out. That wasn't God's best. That wasn't His intent for them. But He still loved them. And He didn't go, oh no, Abraham, you're horrible and you made a mistake and I'm done with you. Get out of here, man. He didn't. He continued to walk with them. And you know what? Sometimes when we help God out, it kind of makes a mess. It made a little bit of a mess for them. I'm not going to, yeah, Bruce said sometimes. Yeah, like all the time. I mean, when you read the whole story, you realize there's this family strife, these problems that they had because, Sarah's like upset at Hagar and Abraham's kind of right there in the middle of it, and it causes challenges. So let's do our best not to help God out in our own flesh, right? But ultimately, God still carries His purpose through. Let's fast forward to Abraham being 99 years old now. That's something to whistle about. It really is. He was 75 when God said, leave your family and just trust me. He is now 99 and he still doesn't have a kid from his own seed. Do the math. 24 years. 24 years. There's probably people in here that haven't even been living 24 years. Like, that's a long time. I was a kid 24 years ago. I was 9. That's a long time. You can do the math. I'm 33. Did I just do that math right? But God is faithful to Abraham. In Romans, it says that Abraham was as good as dead since he was about 100 years old, Romans chapter 4. Paul's just telling it like it is. Well, he was as good as dead. He was 100. How would you like someone to say that about you? Well, Robert, you're as good as dead, man. That's terrible. Sarah was 90 years old. 90 years old. Isn't that crazy? And what would absolutely have been impossible in our own human minds and our own human thoughts, God showed himself, he just went all out and showed himself strong enough to do anything. Maybe he waited just to confound all of us. Maybe he waited for us to all sit back and go, well, that had to be God. Maybe he waited so Abraham would go, maybe when I was 75, I could have said that it might have just happened, but I really can't say it could have just happened now because I'm 99 and my wife is 90. How in the world does this happen? It can only be through God. And then whenever we get over to chapter 22, I believe, or 21, 22, God brings a test to Abraham that is, it's going to show us how far Abraham's trust has come in God. This is an ultimate test, and I know most of us know this story, but I'm going to tell it anyway for those who don't know it. Abraham and Sarah finally have Isaac. They were old. They were as good as dead. But the scriptures say that God wanted to see where Abraham's heart is. God tested Abraham. And Isaac was the one to whom all the promises, all the stuff, all that God had been promising for 24 years, 25, forever, all these things, and actually it's been longer than 24 years at this point. For these years and years and years, all this that God has promised, the reason that Abraham left, the reason he left his own home, all of this is wrapped up in this child. And then God says something that's just totally, really, he asked him to do something that's out of his character completely. Let's just be real. The scriptures say that when it comes to sacrificing children, that's an abomination to God. It's an abomination. That he wants nothing to do with that. He doesn't like murder. He's a God of life. You understand that? He wants nothing to do with this, but yet he is going to see where Abraham's heart is. And Abraham's going to get to see where his heart is. And so he says, I want you to go sacrifice Isaac. And I'm like sitting back going, like, think of how hard that would be. Like, I don't know. Am I there yet? I don't know, man. That's tough. And I'm reminded that sometimes God asks us to do things that we're not really sure why. You ever had that happen? You ever felt in your heart, God, just go do this, or go move here, or go there, or to do something, and you just feel in your heart, this is what God is clearly telling you to do, but you just don't really know why. Years later, sometimes we know why. You ever have that happen? Where like you didn't know why for a while, and then later on you're like, oh, well, that's why. Maybe I went through this so that I could walk through someone going through this, or I did this because of that, or got, whatever that may be so that I can have this experience or whatever. But sometimes God just asks us to trust him. And the cool thing is Abraham had so much trust in God, Hebrews chapter 11 says that Abraham believed that God would just raise up Isaac from the dead. Like, he knew God had put him and taken him through all of this, and he had to have known God's heart. He talked to God. He had to know at least a little bit, probably a lot. And Abraham, in his mind, said, you know what? God has given me all of this. He hasn't walked me through this for 20-something years in order to see it all destroyed in Isaac. So I know that this isn't going to happen, or even if it does, and I have to kill Isaac, that God's going to raise him up from the dead. I just trust him. I can just imagine like what that would feel like, but Abraham trusted God. And Abraham showed that there is nothing more important to him than trusting in God. And no wonder he was the father of many nations. He made some mistakes along the way, but he took a risk. He took many risks. He even made some mistakes. You know when you take risks, you flub up a lot of times, or sometimes, right? Have you ever tried to learn something new and did it perfectly and never made a mistake? If you have, I'd just love to hear your story. Like you ever tried a new hobby or something and you never, missed the wrong note by playing guitar, or you got on your bicycle and you never fell off, or you started playing basketball and you never missed a shot. It always happens. You make mistakes. All through these scriptures are risk takers, and most of them make mistakes. I think God would rather have a risk taker who made a mistake than someone that goes and buries their talent in the ground. And that reminds me of that parable of the talents, where God says, he gave these talents to these people. And the one guy at the end, he comes up to him, he took his one talent. And so many of us read that and go, I can't believe he would do that. That guy was dumb, or whatever we would say. But yet, I see so many, and I've done this. How many of us are burying our talents? How many of us are so afraid to step out and trust God that we're burying it in the ground? Because when he comes back, we can say, well, at least we didn't lose it. I think God would have rather that guy risked it and lost it than him being too scared to do anything with it and going and burying it. And I feel in my heart this morning, guys, that God's asking us to join his adventure. He's asking us to come along with him and to begin to trust him in new ways in our lives. To let go and to join just this awesome relationship and awesome adventure with him. And that word just keeps coming to my mind because we love to hear these stories. But we can all be a part of the same stories. We're all part of the same story. And my risk, like I said earlier, and yours might look different. They do look different. I'm sure that they do. But I believe I'm so tired. I get so tired of living this safe Christianity. Where I want to take some risks and trust God. There's a lot of people, man, that will say things like, I struggle to hear from God. It's hard. You say you hear from God, John. How do you hear from God? Well, I take risks. Sometimes I think I hear from God and I don't. And if I just went back into a corner and cried about it and said, well, I'm never trying that again, I wouldn't be here at Stones River because I felt like I heard the Lord. Didn't feel like. I know I heard the Holy Spirit tell me to come here. But that takes time. It takes risk. It takes me stepping out, and occasionally, I'll probably maybe more than occasionally, I make the mistake. I may not do what's right, but he's so big to pick us up. He's so big. Peter's denying him, man. And then he ends up using him to do all kinds of awesome things for the kingdom of God. Peter was a risk taker. He was willing. He was like, hey, let's go jump out in the water. Just wild man. I like Peter. That's why I like Justin, because Justin's like Peter. He just goes out and he just does it. It's just awesome. So let's just ask ourselves this morning, guys. Let's just look into our hearts and let's just ask ourselves, what are the areas in my life? What are the things that the Lord has told me to do and is working in my life that maybe, I can take that risk. I'm going to do it. I want to start walking. And I'll say this before I end here, that Abraham's first thing that he had to do was just go. And it was a hard thing to do. But oftentimes, when I've been in my relationship with God, I've been saying, God, I want to obey you and trust you. And so that means on a daily basis, I'm saying, God, how can I trust you? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, we look at it and go, oh my gosh, someone's going to change the United States. But if I can't serve my family and trust God for that, then how do I think that I'm going to do all of this every single little step? And I'm taking, like, I made a little video and I put it on Facebook. I don't know who saw that. I didn't want to do that at all. I didn't. I don't like that kind of stuff. I deleted it 3 or 4 times. Because I was like, I don't want to see my face on Facebook. I don't want to make a video about that this week. But the Holy Spirit kept saying, there's for whatever reason, I want you to share that. And maybe it's just so I can tell you guys a practical example of me saying, I'm going to trust you, God. This was a risk. I don't want to be out there like that. But in that, and some of you may say, that's easy or whatever. It wasn't for me. It really wasn't for me. But I had to say, okay, God, I really don't like this. I really don't like seeing my face out there. But Holy Spirit, Lord, you're telling me, so I'm just going to go. And there's something that broke some pride in my heart. It really did. And it helped me to trust God. And so my encouragement is, as we're just listening to God, that we would be open to every day, those little steps. It may not be something that we would see as grandiose, but it may be us just learning how to trust God. When we go and visit with a neighbor, when we go to our workplace, starting to say, God, I want to step out. I appreciate everybody praying for me when I went to Columbus. I had a good time, and I remember towards the end of my visit, I had told this lady that I've known for a while, and her mom is like stage 4 cancer or whatever, and I just said, I just want you to know that I'm praying for you and I'm praying for your mom, and you guys are in my heart. And that was not easy for me to say. This was a work-related thing, right? Remember how I told you that's hard for me sometimes? And I know that's a simple statement. You know what her response was? I want you to come to my house next time you come to Columbus and have dinner with me. I'm like I'm going there praying for a person of peace. If y'all know what that, you know what I mean? And maybe this is a house of peace, maybe not, I don't know. But it was just, it was hard, a little bit. But I'm just trusting. I'm trying again to learn how to practically trust him like that. And I know that the little bits that I give him, he just turns into amazing things. He turns my little bitty talent into something awesome whenever I just hand it over to him and just say, you got it, God. You got it. Father, we thank you for all that you have given us. We thank you for the talents and the giftings, the skills, all these little things that you've given us, Father. And we all have them, and we thank you for that. We won't downplay that you have given us. You've made us in your image, and you've given us beautiful things. We let go of them today, God. Even if it makes us look silly. We want to learn how to trust you more and more and more and more and more and more. We thank you for all the times in our lives that we have trusted you and all the places that you have brought us through, God. And we just want more and more, because the more we let go and trust you, the better our lives are. Lord, I say that to you from my heart. From experience, God, the better my life is, the better I just trust you. And I know your plans are so much more amazing for all of us than we could even really fathom. You told Abraham just to go. He probably had no idea all the steps of the way and all the things that would take place. Help us to just trust you and see your kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. Loving our cities, loving our neighbors, and trusting you. In Jesus' name, amen. Let's worship God, guys. He's worthy. He's worthy of it. He's worthy of it. We love you, Lord.
Not angels, nor demons.